Good evening, everybody. We're going to get this show on the road right now. There's still people in the hallway. I'm sure they'll filter in during the course of the beginning of this thing, and we'll try to help them keep the noise down as they do that. My name's Kim Smythe. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. And I'll start, as always, by offering respect to Nanaimo First Nation, on whose unceded territory we're holding this event tonight. Welcome to the Nanaimo Mayoral Leadership Debate, hosted by the Chamber and our Nanaimo. Thanks for being here and for your engagement and commitment to the 2018 municipal election. This is a pivotal event for this community, obviously. All elections are important. However, this one just happens to strike many of us as the most important that we've had in a while. I don't think anybody would argue that the last 4 years have been tumultuous. In fact, that would be understating what we've been through in actuality. In the lead up to the last election, the Chamber and its partners in the community worked hard to urge more citizens to use their vote and to increase voter turnout. We were very happy that, in fact, we did see a 25% increase in voter turnout at the polls last year, but that did not equate to better governance, in my opinion. This year, our theme is Vote Smart. Educate and inform yourselves and reach for the best possible choices when you mark your ballot. That's what tonight and next Monday night in the VITVca is all about. I'd like to thank members of our Nanaimo for their collaboration on this and other governance initiatives with us over the past 6 months, including the Civic Leadership Speaker Series back in the spring. Thank you to our scrutineer, Merv Unger, and his YPN representative, who we're still trying to find in the building, who's assisting. If you would like to submit a question during the course of the evening that will be asked at the end of the debate, if it hasn't already been approached during the course of the debate, then Merv will be scrutinizing those questions and passing them up to the candidates. Thanks to our timekeepers, David Hatchman and Sasha Burton. David's obviously running around someplace because, there we go, David over here, thank you very much. They will be keeping the candidates online and on time, or in line and on time tonight. The event is being live streamed to the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page by Alan Felker of Vancouver Island Television, and will also be available for viewing after the event. There is another live streaming group here tonight, and it's ex-Local Nanaimo on Facebook, who have 20,000 followers. So we hope that this reaches an awful lot of people. I want to thank the media for their support, especially the Nanaimo Bulletin and the Wave and the Wolf, and thanks also to the young professionals of Nanaimo when they show up tonight. And now a final word of thanks to our moderator, Dominic Abassi of Nanaimo News Now. Please help me in welcoming Dominic to the stage.
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here and being involved in municipal politics. Incredibly important, as Kim alluded to. My name is Dominic Abassi. I'm the news director with NanaimoNewsNow.com. I'll go over briefly some of the format for the evening, and then we'll get right into things. We do have a very packed agenda, and I will ask for your cooperation on a number of things to help us move forward and get the most out of this evening. I would please ask you now to turn off your cell phone ringers. Let's make sure that everyone's on silent or vibrate mode there. Please, and this is very important, do not applaud after the candidate remarks. Don't heckle or disrupt or applaud. We simply don't have enough time to get through with applause after each remark. And again, please turn off your cell phones as well. We're going to start out the evening with 1 minute for the candidates to introduce themselves to you, to let you know who they are and why they're running for the mayor seat in Nanaimo. After that, we'll move into 4 themes. Within each theme, I will ask an opening question. The candidates will be afforded 60 seconds each to speak to that question. I will then ask a follow-up question under the same theme. It will be posed to a candidate, which will rotate for each theme. And following the initial response, it's a bit of an open format. We're going to give them about 4 minutes where they can speak openly, debate each other, rebut each other. I will be monitoring that timing to ensure that no one candidate particularly hogs the 4 minutes of the evening. Quickly, I want to bring up our timekeeper, David Hatchman, and he'll explain to you his system and what you can look for from the front of the room. David?
Hello, good evening. Okay, it's very, very simple. The speakers have 60, count them, 60 seconds to respond to both to the questions and their initial introductions. The green flag will come on for us, all the audience, and them to see at 30 seconds. At 45 seconds, there will be a orange flag, and at 60 seconds, a red flag. And here where it gets interactive. If they are still speaking, the red flag after 60 seconds, one of us will stand up and we're going to ask you, yes, you, to enthusiastically thank the speaker for their response so we can move on to the next question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'd now like to bring the candidates up to the stage. 3 candidates running for mayor in the city of Nanaimo. Mr. Leonard Krog, Mr. Ray Farmere, and Mr. Don Hubbard. The candidates did not have knowledge of the themes or the questions prior to this evening. They were informed of the general format. We drew numbers randomly out of a cup before we began, and Mr. Farmere was awarded with number 1, so he will open up with 60 seconds for an introduction. Mr. Farmere.
Hi, my name is Ray Farmere. I am running for mayor of Nanaimo. I want to be the mayor who's here for the people, to help the people, who works with council and who listens to what everybody has to say, but to find a fine line so that we can help make things operate more efficiently here. I'd also like to thank the Nanaimo First Nation for letting us be here tonight, for letting us live, love, and play on their land. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farmere. Second up, Mr. Don Hubbard.
Thank you, Dominic, chamber organizers, and all of you for coming out this evening. It may be hard for you to hear me at times. I have a low voice, but in a large room like this, but I assure you my voice can be heard in the meeting room. I came from a working class background in South Nanaimo. I have built a great life here for myself and my family, and I'm running to give back, to share my skills with others so that they can have the same opportunities that I've had in my lifetime. We have so many huge challenges in front of us, but I am ready. I've always been a goal setter and set goals that could not be achieved or thought could not be achieved, but I've achieved them. And I not only achieved my goals, I helped others achieve theirs. I believe that the goal that citizens of Nanaimo right now is that they have an honest, hardworking council in front of them doing the work right in a financial, responsible way. I'm obviously not a professional politician, but I am a person that has proven record and get things done. I ask you to get out and vote for Hubbard.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Leonard Krog.
Good evening, everyone. I too want to recognize we're on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation, and rebuilding that relationship is going to be one of the most important tasks before a new city council. I want to tell you, as I look out over this audience tonight, I hope you're filled with the same excitement and anticipation that I am. This community is ready for change. It's ready to get back on track, and as you all know, the theme of my campaign is bringing people together for change. This is a wonderful town. We are lucky it is rich in history and culture and diversity, and the last 4 years we have not done with it all that and created all that it could have been or should be. So I'm excited by the prospect of seeing so many able people running for council, so many of you anxious to participate and learn about the candidates and learn about the issues. We have a bright future ahead of us. I want to be part of that future. I want to be the leader of a council that's going to get us there, and I hope you're as excited as I say as I am. Nanaimo's going ahead, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the candidates. We'll move on into theme number 1 of the evening. Again, the order of response is random, has been randomized. Mr. Don Hubbard will lead out with the first answer on this question, followed by Mr. Krog and then Mr. Farmere. Under a theme of leadership, leading City Hall governance with council and staff, council operates in a system of collaborative decision-making where the mayor is but one vote among 9, but also serves in a unique leadership role to set the tone and direction of not only council but also staff. Mr. Hubbard, what would make you an effective mayor, and what specific leadership approaches and strategies would you take to enable a productive and high-performing council and city staff?
Thank you, Dominic. Well, I've always believed in a consensus way of doing business with councils or boards or people that I've been doing business with or just working with. Working with a council, getting to know, first of all, the council would have to get to know each other very well. Right? That's important that they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. The mayor takes the role of bringing council together for a common goal. And if the council doesn't have a common goal, then that's an issue. So I believe in that strategy right off the bat, that we know which direction we're going, and then we go from there. The mayor has to lead that and has to coordinate things for the council so that the council isn't wasting time deciding things when we don't have a proper consensus. And I believe that should work right down through staff. Staff only has one employee that reports to the council, and that's the CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Mr. Krog, I'll repeat the question again here for you.
It's all right. We don't have that much time tonight, but thank you. Look, I have risen to the presidency of virtually every organization I've ever belonged to, from Mid-Island Co-op to Planned Parenthood to the Nanaimo Community Assistance Society. I've chaired caucuses, government caucuses under 3 premiers. And I won't tell the old joke about the difference between a caucus and a cactus. Let me just say that I'm used to working with people, and one of the things that excites me about the prospect of being mayor is being able to work in a collaborative atmosphere. I spent 18 years in the BC legislature where if they say it's black, we say it's white, and then we spend the rest of the day debating that. I want to work in a cooperative atmosphere that gets this city back on track. I'm excited by that. I'm sure you're all excited by that. I've worked with people throughout my life. I've practiced law for 39 years. I've dealt with difficult clients and difficult folks. So I'm ready to work with a council, particularly as I say, and as I said in my opening remarks, with the quality of people who have stepped forward, ambitious and anxious to serve your city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krog. Mr. Farmere, would you like the question again?
No. The mayor needs to recognize that the council are here from the people. The people have put them here. We need to listen to what they have to say. They've been put here for us to work with, to make Nanaimo a better place, a more effectively functional place. Each one of the council members has been picked uniquely, and we need to recognize that, and by recognizing that, we will work with them to help make Nanaimo better.
Thank you, Mr. Farmere. Now a follow-up question under the same theme, and again, we will allow several minutes of open debate here for the candidates to speak to each other, rebut each other, and share their thoughts on this. We will begin with Mr. Krog, starting us off, and then again, an open floor from there. Mr. Krog, as we've seen over the previous 4 years, a mayor does not always have the support of all or even the majority of councillors. Comparing yourself with some of the qualities of the other candidates, what makes you the best suited to bring together a unit to work collaboratively to a goal for the city of Nanaimo?
I could repeat the answer that I gave to the initial question. I could also tell you I've been married for 45 years to the same wonderful woman, raised a couple of teenagers, and have grandchildren. I'm used to working collaboratively with people. That's the nature of what I like to do. I've worked in various executives of various organizations. I've run a small business, kept staff happy, had to hire and fire, deal with people all my life. I've had to try and work with other politicians to make things happen. So I think I'm qualified to do that. And I bring to this job both the practical experience of politics, 18 years in elected politics, but I also bring to it my experience in the private sector. And I think I bring a balance of those things that will enable me to work with the diverse people in this community and the diverse organizations that I want to bring together and see work together. We accomplish everything that is good in our lives collaboratively.
Thank you,
we
Mr.
don't
Krog.
do it by fighting one another.
Well, I'd like to interject. We both come from different backgrounds. Leonard Krog comes from a political background in Victoria, where there's people in power, people in opposition. That's an opposing view. Quite often, it's strictly opposing. The governance for a municipality, there is no opposing view. There may be difference of opinion, but we're all working for the same cohesive group. We don't have them and us. We had them and us recently. We don't want that again. That's my concern, and I don't think we want to go there.
Mr. Farmer?
Yeah. So yeah, I feel I agree. Everybody working together is going to create the most effective government and get legislation passed. We haven't had an effective government for quite a while in Nanaimo, as we've seen in the news and all these different things with what's been going on with council. So let's work together. Let's get legislation passed for some new local bylaws.
Mr. Krog, any commentary towards what Mr. Hubbard said?
Look, I have not endorsed any of the council candidates, and I've not asked them to endorse me for a very simple reason. Because I don't want to start off on the same footing the last council did, and that kind of division. I don't want to be working with people who think I didn't want them there or vice versa, and I think that's important. And I've done that for a specific reason, because I'm conscious of what's gone on. I'm conscious of the fact that we have to work together. I'm conscious of the fact that I will only have one vote on council. But you know what? I think the easy stuff is what we all agree on. And that's the stuff that's going to start off this new council, and that is around good governance. That's why you're all here. If you'd had 4 years of good governance, people wouldn't have asked me to run for mayor to start with. They would have been re-electing Bill McKay, and everything would have been grand in the world. But we know that's not what happened. So I'm prepared to do that, and I would suspect that everybody else is. The reality is, most of the people running for council who stand a chance of election, I've already worked with them. I've already been involved in the community organizations. I know who they are. And the reason I know who they are is because they've been out doing the good things in the community and deserve to get elected.
Mr. Hubbard, a final thought, 30 seconds.
Well, I've been asked many times, who would I pick for a council member out of the 40 candidates? And I can tell you, I have not mentioned anybody's name to anybody, because I'm prepared to work with whoever the electorate elects. I've done this in the past. I've never had an ability to pick or choose a board or a council or a group that I'm going to work with, unless they were working for me in a business. I'm prepared to work with whoever the population of the voters put in place. And that's a diverse council, and I believe that's what we need. Thank you.
We'll now move on to theme number 2 on the evening, partnerships. Leading and representing Nanaimo. Of course, City Council's only one tier of government, and they operate in a very complex political environment, interacting with multiple partners and stakeholders to achieve objectives and priorities. We'll begin this question with Mr. Farmere, starting us out, to be followed by Mr. Hubbard and then Mr. Krog. 60 seconds for a response. Describe how you see the mayor's leadership role in the community and regionally with the city's partners, stakeholders, and citizens. Specifically, talk about rebuilding crucial relationships with groups like the Nanaimo, the Port of Nanaimo, and the provincial government. Mr. Farmere?
So to answer that, what I'd like to do is first I'd like to sit down with council and see where we were at in the past with each of these organizations. Then, after we've determined where we were at with these organizations, I'd like to sit down with each of these organizations and talk to them and see what they'd like to do to make things better for themselves and the relationship with us. I'd also like to throw a survey out to all the citizens of Nanaimo and see what they would like to see improved here. Then I'd like to take the majority results of the survey and put them before the council and see what the council can do to work with me to make Nanaimo better.
Thank you, Mr. Farmere. Mr. Hubbard?
The mayor speaks for council and for the city. But the mayor speaks for council after he's spoken to council. So mayor would have to meet with council, discuss the relationships with all the stakeholders that we deal with, regional district, First Nations, Nanaimo, all the stakeholders in the area. And then go out and we'll start a new day, a phone call to make arrangements, personal contact, and we'll move forward. People have to have confidence that we're going to make some huge changes for the good, and get away from the issues that we had before. I've got a history of actually doing that in a lot of cases. where we've mended some bridges in my work with Island Health, with my work with other not-for-profit organizations where we had bad relationships, been able to heal them and bring them back. And that's so important that we do that.
Mr. Krog?
Look, I have worked with various groups and leaders in this community for 18 years. I've worked with them as an opposition member, as a member of a government caucus two times as well. I know who the major players are, and as I said earlier, I want to bring them together. And it's only the mayor's opportunity. It's only a mayor who has the opportunity to bring those people together. It's not going to be the chair of the RDN or the president of the university. That's the mayor's and the council's job, to show that leadership, to bring people together to work for change. It's why I chose the theme that I did. It wasn't just some cute political slogan. Bringing people together for change is what this is all about. I know those players already. I've worked with those players. I've had to work with a government when I was a member of opposition, trying to secure benefits for my community, trying to solve problems. I know what it is to work collaboratively. I know what it is to provide that kind of leadership. And that leadership is going to be absolutely crucial. We are on the cusp of great change in this community, whether we want it or not. We are going to be the focus of further development and growth, whether we want it or not. And we have to be prepared as a council to work together with all the organizations and take the leadership role in the community that we need to. I've already met with Chief Wise of the Nanaimo First Nation. I'm out there now. I still continue to work with those people as your unpaid MLA as of the 22nd of September, because it's important to continue those relationships and ensure that they work. And I think somebody should shut me up, or I'm going to keep talking the whole darn time here.
Thank you very much. We'll move on again to a more open period of dialogue here. And this will begin with Mr. Hubbard addressing the question. We talked about strategic relationships, crucial relationships to moving the city's future forward, the Nanaimo, the Port of Nanaimo, provincial government, federal government. Which of those do you see as the most strategic relationship, and what makes you best suited to build that bridge and forward progress?
Well, strategically, and I hate to use the word strategically because that means we're trying to build a camp. But really, I think Nanaimo First Nation, Nanaimo, that's the first fence we've got to heal. And I go back in my history when I first came to Nanaimo in 1958. I landed on Cameron Island on a CPR steamship. And I lived on a farm between the two First Nations reserves on the Nanaimo River. They were the first people to welcome me here. And I've kept some relationships, friendly relationships with a lot of people from the reserves, First Nations groups ever since. A real relationship. I played lacrosse with them. I got beat up a few times, but it was a really good, strong relation. Went to school with them. But I think that's critical to us moving forward in Nanaimo to get things like the port and the waterfront rebuilt and all the other issues we're having in some of our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Feel free.
In reply to that, I agree that the Nanaimo First Nation is one of the most important groups to work with here. But I also think that maybe we want to go ahead and look at making a special day to remember the things that they went through in the past, such as the residential schools and that sort of thing, just something local in the community. We had a great mayor once, Frank Ney. He was one of the greatest. He went ahead, he was always a mayor for the people. He was out there, and he went ahead and he helped create the Nanaimo Bathtub Day and stuff like that. But the thing is if we can have a mayor that can go ahead and recognize what happened to these people and just help them and just work more with the community, that would be great. And that's what I'd like to do.
Look, I bring an understanding of the political process to this. I'm a lawyer by profession. I've had to work with all levels of government as an MLA. Including the federal government. The proudest thing I can say about my campaign is that it's composed of a diverse group of people, left, right, and center in this community. Because I promised and committed to them when they asked me to run that I would take partisanship out of municipal politics. It's not important to me. What is important is that we do work together, that we work with the SFN, that we work with everybody to ensure that we can start to move this community forward on those things that we can agree upon. You know, the desires for most of us are all the same. We want some security, we want opportunities for our children and our grandchildren. And for me, what's really important is the concept that my children who work and live here and have prospered here, married here and produced our grandchildren, that their children will have the same opportunity. And that's the kind of community I want. I think it's the kind of community that all of us want.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard?
Well, yeah, moving forward, I understand that, you know, we have to build build a relationship. But there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with right now in the community that we're trying to deal with, and that's the homeless issue. That's a whole other question. But if we look at the south end of Nanaimo, we really have got some problems with boarded-up buildings and derelict buildings. So I think part of the relationship building is developing this property in the south Nanaimo with First Nations going along with us to do that. And I think that's really important that we have that strategy. If we want to use strategy, that's a strategy I would have.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to theme number 3 of the evening. Each candidate given 60 seconds to answer our opening question. This round will begin with Mr. Krog. Talking about stewardship of resources, setting direction, oversight, accountability, and evaluation. Of course, the City of Nanaimo has a $200 million operating budget, over 700 staff, and $1 billion in capital assets. Mr. Krog, describe your approach to managing the city budget and steps you would take to regain voters' trust and confidence in the management of those assets.
I think one of the first things we have to talk about is the restoration of a genuine and successful and difficult, if you will, or domineering, however you want to describe them, tenacious audit committee that actually audits the city's finances appropriately. It's about opening up the city's finances. It's about allowing the people to see in and understand what we're doing. It's about better communication between the citizens of this community and the council who is spending that budget. It's also about hiring a CAO in an open and transparent process to ensure that we're satisfied we've got good people. We've lost over 40 managers or close to 40 managers in the last 4 years. We're having difficulty hiring people at the hourly positions because they don't want to work in a city with the reputation we have. So it gets down to leadership, it gets down to transparency and openness, and it gets down to managing an organization. I was chair of Mid-Island Co-op when we had 2 food stores, 100+ employees, and you know, revenues of tens of millions of dollars. And I've run an office. I know how to meet a payroll.
Thank you. Mr. Farmere?
What I want to do if I get elected mayor of Nanaimo is I want to take a look at every department's spending and see how every department is doing. I want to ask for an audit of every department, which will prove their spending. And then once we've proven their spending, we'll see where we really are and then what we can do to make Nanaimo better, because we need to know where we are first. But once we've done that, then we got the clear direction to go in, and then once we have that direction, I will definitely look forward to guiding everybody in that direction. And one of the directions we want to go in is to being more internationally recognized and recognized all over Canada.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard?
So what we're really talking about here is public trust. Public trust that we're spending your money in a wise and fiduciary way. And public is only going to trust that if they can see it. If they have to FOI everything they want to see, freedom of information for every item they want to see, that's a problem. And I went to work on a governance board for the province of British Columbia where we had 6 people running around trying to find FOI papers for people who were putting in FOIs. And I said, why don't we just make this public? We're going to have to show people anyway. And it was expenses and personal expenses, not personal, but expenses for employees and executives. So we ended up putting all that information online and got rid of the guesswork and the suspicion that there was something wrong. We have to do that. I totally believe in audits. I run a private organization that we have a full audit committee and we do proper audits. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now enter into a follow-up question under the same theme, and again, several minutes for the candidates to speak openly on this. We will begin this segment with Mr. Farmere opening up, and then open floor from there. During the recent budget deliberations with the city, main point of debate was on how to use surpluses and reserves. And we saw in this most recent year, the city used some surplus and reserve to keep the tax increase a little bit lower than it otherwise would have been. There are those that would argue that it's much more prudent to use reserves and surpluses to put money away for the future, specifically asset and infrastructural renewal. Do you agree with maintaining modest tax increases to continue funding reserves and future asset and infrastructural renewal? Or do you agree with using reserves and surpluses to achieve the lowest possible tax increase in every budget cycle? Mr. Farmere?
Well, we want to have reserves on hand in case there's any major issues that come up. For example, we've had in the last year the major issue of Tent City come up with many people with nowhere to live. So in this situation, what I would do with some of the reserves, if it was okay with council and if it was okay with the people, I would look at creating an organization, a nonprofit organization that would help the homeless get low-income housing. And I've already talked to our MP for Nanaimo, and she says she'd be willing to sit down with me if I get elected and talk about a homeless plan to get the homeless into some housing.
Grab at it.
I remember a time when Canadians were notorious for being great savers. I opened my first account at a credit union, I think, when I was 10 years old. It was just kind of expected in my generation. The concept that you wouldn't set aside surpluses for future issues, to me, is just an anathema. I mean, look, that's the whole point. City governments have to balance their budgets, but with surpluses, you should be setting aside the money for the future so that when you need a project, when the city comes to an agreement on what it wants to do, you're not looking at some dramatic tax increase to fund it. So yeah, I'm a fiscal conservative on this stuff. You get some money set aside, then by all means, you know what, hang on to it, put it in the surplus pot. Nobody likes to pay increased taxes, except of course when it's used to fund the project that's important to them.
I don't believe the city is any different than any other organization. And having a huge bulging savings account is not a good way of fiduciary of handling the money. I would like to see a review of all of our public assets, what age they're at, what likelihood that we're going to have issues with failure. Bridges come to mind. There's number one. I know we've got some dam structure we have to do on our water course. We have a large sewer treatment plant we're putting in right now, but I don't believe in having a huge bank account. We wouldn't do that ourselves. We'd have it invest in doing something else, but taxing people to put it away for a rainy day, I would want to really have a hard look at that and see what the real need is there.
I've heard a couple of you reference an audit or review, committees to explore and look into things. And another topic that has been broached quite recently is the next phase of the core services review. I'll put that to all of you, and whoever wants to grab it first can. Would you be in favor of seeing the next phase of the core services review move ahead?
Look, the concept that you review your services, but to talk about a core service review, much of what's gone on in the city in the last several years, the reality is management's told the councillors and the mayor what they had to do. The information is there. It's just that most often politicians don't have the political courage to make the cuts that will actually impact on people. And that's where the politics of this is all about. People throw around the term audit as if it's just this happy little exercise. Well, they cost a lot of money, folks. And you don't want to be auditing things unless you're satisfied there is a real issue. And if we're open and transparent in how we govern this city, the need for audits, both on a political, a communications, and a practical level, won't be there.
Thank you, Mr. Krog. Thank you.
Well, audits are to make sure that you spend your money wisely. Usually it's already spent by the time you get to the audit. And to make sure that the money is spent in a wise fiduciary way. I I don't have a problem with spending money on audits to make sure that the public is assured that their money was spent in a proper way. And if there's some problems with the way it was spent, the public should know it's their money. The core review, I know we only implemented part of it. I would want to review the whole core review, but why did we spend the money on a core review if we're not going to implement the results? I really have to ask that question.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Mr. Farmere, anything on that topic?
Yes, I think we need to take a step back also and ask the people what the core services are that they think that they need to make Nanaimo a better Nanaimo. And we could do that through the form of a survey, possibly. And by presenting the survey, we can look at the data that's gathered in that against what's being used and not being used. For example, we have a 14-kilometer dead space in the city bus system between Nanaimo and Ladysmith. We have many VIU students who cannot get to school without having to get rides from friends and other people. It would be much easier for many of them have said it would be nice if they could just go ahead and have Nanaimo fill that 14-kilometer gap. That's just one core service that we could look at using.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our final theme before we get into some questions from the floor. And of course, an issue that is very topical of late and one that many cities in BC are dealing with, the housing, affordability, and homelessness crisis, and particularly crisis management and dealing with these issues as they're ongoing. This round will begin with Mr. Hubbard. As mayor, thinking again of the homelessness crisis, discontent city, and the issues related, as mayor, how do you propose to deal with this crisis immediately and also on the longer term? Thank you.
Well, presently I understand that there's a temporary solution to some of the homelessness, but it's only going to manage probably half the population. We've got a crisis in Nanaimo, and we've had some incidents in the last week or so that are really alarming and not doing anything for the truly homeless people's cause. I was really disappointed to see what happened on the weekend. But further than that, I would want to go to the public. We as a population and all the people I've talked to know that we've got a duty of care to give people a hand up. But we have to go out and talk to the public about this and talk to them about the question of where. That always is the issue. And you know, the last 2 times that we've gone through this, people were not properly informed, period. And whether it was the right place or not, it still is a problem when you don't talk to our taxpayers. I live beside White House right now. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Mr. Krog?
Look, everybody wants the crisis of homelessness solved, but I'm not prepared to commit the city to more than its fair share of its responsibility from a legal and jurisdictional point of view. And that means ensuring that land is available, that community consultations have taken place, and when the province is ready to step up to the plate, as it has in a very significant way this year, the offer of 44 units the council turned down, 159 seniors housing units going into Buttertubs, and 170 units announced this week, and the very day some idiots chose to occupy Rutherford School. The fact is that a good council avoids a crisis. I can't fix what's happened in the last 4 years or the last 16 years when we weren't putting money into public housing and supportive housing. But what I can do as mayor with a council that is concerned and committed is ensure that the processes are in place, the land is identified, and we're ready to move forward to help the homeless in this community.
Thank you, Mr. Krog. Mr. Farmere?
What I'd like to do is I'd like to sit down with some of the building owners in Nanaimo. There's many vacant and dormant buildings just sitting, basically, that could be used to help the homeless people. But it would require sitting down with the building owners and the council. I would also look at ways of creating money. So by setting up maybe a nonprofit organization which would be responsible for bringing in more money to help the homeless and creating homes for the people to live in. And it's the responsibility of the mayor, I feel, to go out there and help find the fundraising, find the money, and just to be able to be there for the people.
Thank you. We'll go again into a follow-up question, a little more open period, and Mr. Krog will lead us out on this particular section. Do you support committing substantial city resources, financial or otherwise, to addressing the housing and homelessness crisis, or do you believe this is an issue where we rely on senior levels of government?
Look, it is ultimately the provincial government's responsibility and arguably the federal government. This country once had a national housing strategy. Tell me, how many of you remember the kind of street homelessness you've seen here in the last 5 or 10 years? Do you remember that? Do you remember Canada where you associated street homelessness with the downtown east side if you were lucky? The fact is, this is a result of consistent government policy at senior levels for many years. The provinces and the federal government are now hoping the cities are going to step up and solve the problem. We don't have the resources or the tax regime or the ability to do so. But where we have the opportunity to do our part, whether it's around zoning, community consultation, and the provision of land to do our part, this City Council, I believe, and the people who are running are committed to doing that. We're going to do our share, but we are not going to expend the resources doing the province's job. And mercifully, as I said a few minutes ago, the province has stepped up to the plate. I think it's time to say thank you very much. Please, sir, however, we want some more.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I believe that Nanaimo, as a lot of people in the province and Canada are watching what Nanaimo is doing right now. I believe that the population agree. We do have an obligation to look after our people that live here in Nanaimo that are less fortunate than we are. But I'm seeing a lot of people here, and I'm hearing that a lot of people here are not from Nanaimo. They're not maybe even from BC. We can't be the savior of the whole country. So we have to be very careful. If we say, well, we'll ask for more money from the province of British Columbia, that's great, but how many of these buildings are we going to build? And what is this going to do to our culture of our town? There's people moving here from all over Canada to live here, build a home, which is great. Welcome. It's a great place to retire, but it's also you're allowed to come here whether you've got a home or not. And that's a challenge for our culture, our economy, and our way of life. I don't want to be cold-hearted with this, but we really have to be careful that we don't become the place to go to. I think Nanaimo has been very benevolent in fact, and I mentioned before about it.
Thank you, Mr.
Before I got cut off. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Farmere?
Yes, we're about to spend a whole lot more money in the next few days, removing the people from Tent City, money in police resources, money in other things such as they brought the military in last time as well. So what would happen if we could put that money towards a better use, towards helping the people, rather than starting a civil war with them within our own community?
Thank you. We'll now move into questions from the floor. These have been submitted to our scrutineer, Mr. Mervunger, who has scrutinized them and passed them over to me. Each candidate will be awarded 30 seconds to respond to these questions, so a rather tight timeline, 30 seconds. You will not obviously see a green flag. You'll see an orange for your 15-second warning, and then the red coming up shortly after. Again, we'll randomize the order here. And we will begin this round with Mr. Krog. This question from the floor: what are your priorities to improve transportation and commuting in Nanaimo? Please explain why.
I think it would be rather nice if you could actually catch a bus from anywhere in the city to the airport, or maybe Duke Point Ferry Terminal. Maybe I'm being wishful here when I say this, but it just strikes me in a modern city where you have one form of transportation bringing you into a city or where you can get out of the city, that you actually want them to have a connect to one another. So I'd say that's a fair priority for me. But also, candidly, like everybody else, encouraging further bike traffic, more pedestrian-friendly streets, and making our city, I might say, to those who face disabilities, more accessible, because we are not a very accessible city.
Thank you. Mr. Farmere?
I agree with the whole transportation thing. We need to get more into transportation as well, in terms of filling those bus gaps. And also, we want to look at other things possibly too, like improving the handy dart and things like that, because we have many seniors in Nanaimo, and it's very inaccessible for them in many ways as well.
Mr. Hubbard?
I've been asked several times, I've talked to a lot of seniors recently. Transportation's a huge issue for them, isolation. We need to get to the new technology. There's apps out where you could have like an Uber bus that'll take you and come and pick you up and not have to go and wait at a bus stop or even get to the bus stop. For a lot of people, that's impossible. For seniors, I'd like to see a much better transportation system for getting to Vancouver. I really want to see a foot ferry, but I want to see it operated privately.
Thank you. Next question, we'll begin with Mr. Farmere. Again, under the theme of transportation, and some of you touched on it in your last remarks. Do you support higher levels of municipal investment in cycling infrastructure?
I wouldn't, now looking at the municipal budget, depending on where it's at, if we didn't have a lot of money to put into it, I would look at getting the money elsewhere through finding it through funding and whatnot, through sponsorships. I would look at sponsorships.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard?
Cycling infrastructure, I've watched this evolve in other communities. I agree with it. I'm a cyclist. I have a bike and all those things. But there's certain areas where I don't believe it should be pushed into our community, especially in commercial areas where there's shopkeepers and other stores. Difficult for those people. But around universities and places where people are looking for a healthy lifestyle, I look at the E&N Trail as a possibility if the tracks ever came out that we'd have a good bicycle path through Nanaimo, a good bicycle walking path.
Thank you. Mr. Krog?
So given the marijuana law changes, what do you mean by a high level? Let me just say that we face a crisis in our healthcare system of obesity, so anything that encourages people to get on bicycles or to walk or make the community more accessible by those methods is something to be encouraged, and it's not expensive. Building roads is very expensive. Funding more transit buses is expensive. But there are things we can do to make our city more friendly, and I think we should. Do I encourage a high level? What do you mean? I hate questions like that. Is that 1% of the budget or 10% or 15% of the budget? Let me just say I'm a modern thinker.
Thank you. We'll begin this question with Mr. Hubbard.
Yes.
You have to be quick on this one. What are your top 3 priorities?
Number 1, governance. Number 2, relationships with our stakeholders and our community. Bring back trust to City Hall from the taxpayer. Number 3, bring back investment climate in Nanaimo to make us a place where people are attracted to come and invest their hard-earned money without fear of a great loss. We have a reputation we need to get over.
Mr. Krog?
Look, ditto on all of them, except I think we have to talk about specific projects that are important, which may have been mentioned tonight. It's about getting a hotel built next door so this civic center doesn't drain on taxpayers' wallets. It's about ensuring a transportation network that involves the fast ferry that I've been working with those folks for the last year and a half. Let's get a fast ferry between downtown Nanaimo and downtown Vancouver. Let us make this and densification of downtown is absolutely crucial, and I'm committed to that. I want to see the downtown businesses in our community prosper and succeed and make it the kind of city we're all proud of.
Thank you. Mr. Farmere?
Well, my number 1 thing is creating a government working with a government that's here for the people. That's the first thing. Second is dealing with the homeless situation and the look of downtown, cleaning it up, because a lot of the money went into the north part of Nanaimo after the 1975 merger. And then number 3, finally, in addition to transportation and also transportation methods.
Thank you. This round will begin with Mr. Krog. Discuss a specific strategy that you would enact to improve transparency and begin to repair some of the tarnished image that Nanaimo has on the national stage?
Firstly, it is about the good governance. It's about having the minimal number of council meetings that aren't public. Let us limit those. I have nothing that I don't want to tell you tonight that I'm not afraid to say anywhere. And I think that's important and crucial. And we have to act responsibly and treat each other respectfully, because literally the nation's eyes have been on Nanaimo for the last few years, and they haven't seen anything very pleasant or anything to respect here. So it's about demonstrating what you believe should be the norm in any civilized society, respectful behavior to one another.
Mr. Farmere?
I would look at the damage that has been done in terms of the different organizations and places that it has been done with in terms of Nanaimo's, their impression of Nanaimo. And I would say, I would ask them what led up to this, and then I would sit down with them and I would ask them how we could change this with them and show them a better Nanaimo.
Thank you. We'll begin this question with Mr. Farmere. Minister Selina Robinson has asked Nanaimo City Council to wait to disperse Discontent City beyond the deadline they are allowed to do so on October 12th and agree to a phased dispersal of Discontent City. Would you agree to that, or would you be in favor of removing the encampment as soon as the court-ordered deadline would allow?
I would be in more favor of a phased dispersal, and the reason for that is because we have to treat people like people. So what that means is if we were to remove them immediately, that could be almost considered like an injustice against humanity to a point.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard?
Same question? Because
Yes.
I didn't get a chance to respond to the last question.
Oh, my apologies.
So I can't even remember what the last question was because now I'm on this one. But the dispersal of Tent City, I have a 5-point plan for Tent City, and it's online. And number one is to take control of it. We didn't have control of it. We got people coming, going, and a recent incident there was a prime example. There was an altercation where somebody got assaulted that was involved in the Rutherford school break-in. Those kinds of things, we've got to take control of it, and then take stake of who's in there and who needs a treatment and who doesn't, who needs medical. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
The
Krog?
assumption is that somehow you can just disperse Tent City and all the problems and the social issues and the mental health issues and the addiction issues are just going to disappear. Yeah, they'll disappear into every neighborhood and every bit of forested land left in this community. The fact is, it is a sensible request from the province. The province has stepped up to the plate, and if the city government had acted responsibly with great respect earlier, we would have achieved this solution a lot earlier. I want to see problems solved. I want to see people housed. I want to see your neighborhood safe and secure, and I don't want to hear any more problems about how people are being harassed down at Port Place.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Mr. Hubbard.
Yep.
Do you feel that the city is currently doing enough to support tourism?
Well, the quick answer to that is, from what I hear from a lot of the people on Commercial Street, no. Quite often, a lot of the shopkeepers and the restaurant owners don't know when a cruise ship is coming in. Sometimes the cruise ship comes in, stores are closed, or if there's things that are happening, they're not aware of it. I think we need to do a lot more there. I think tourism is becoming a huge benefit to Nanaimo, has been for a long time. I just heard the stats from the hotels in the Nanaimo area, 94% occupancy in August, which is a good month.
Thank you. Mr. Krog?
Cruise ships do not a local economy make, friends. You drop them in 3 times a year, that isn't going to meet the rent in December, it isn't going to meet the rent in January, it isn't going to meet the rent in February. The fact is we've done a pretty good job with Tourism Vancouver recently, but I think everything needs to be looked at in terms of promoting Nanaimo. We have everything going for us. We know people want to come here. We know that people compliment us about our geography and our culture and our history. We're the 3rd oldest city in the province. So a better marketing job, you're darn right. And don't tell me tourism jobs aren't good enough anymore. Tourism jobs help sustain our economy and employ our people.
All right. That is all the time we have for questions from the floor. will now ask the candidates to deliver closing remarks, 60 seconds each. We will begin with Mr. Krog.
Well, thank you. I was delighted to be number 3 tonight because I'm reminded what the Bible says, that the last shall be first, which is where I hope to be on October the 20th. A lot of people asked me to do this job. It wasn't my idea, to be honest with you. But the fact that good people in this community did ask me is extremely flattering and touching. And having taken on this opportunity, I regard it as an obligation. This community has been good to me and my family. And I'm immensely grateful for that. And this is another opportunity to serve this community. I'm excited by that. I'm excited by the people, as I said earlier, who are running for council. We're on the cusp of some wonderful things I couldn't imagine living in any other town in the Western world. Nanaimo, we've got it all. Let's make it work together.
Thank you. Mr. Farmere.
Nanaimo is one of the most beautiful places in the world. It has so much to offer in terms of diversity, culture, history, and just things to see that aren't readily available in some other parts of the world. So what I'd like to do, if you all come and vote for me on October 20th, is I'd like to help make Nanaimo a better Nanaimo, a Nanaimo for the people, that's here for all people, and who's willing to listen to all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hubbard.
Thank you. First, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. I want everyone to know that I'll put my heart and soul into achieving the goals and objectives the new City Council sets out for the next 4 years and beyond. The next 4 years will be challenging. We'll have some huge challenges to take on, but I am ready to get started. I want to be part of a very successful council. People can work together on very difficult issues with right leadership. I have done the heavy lifting on many occasions, but never did I do it alone. I always did it as a team. A council with independent thinking and common goals can be very powerful. On October 20th, I want to become your next mayor and part of the next generation Nanaimo City Council to take us into the future. We can achieve so much more working together. I ask you to put your trust in me. I will not disappoint you. Vote for Don Hubbard for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our candidates for being here this evening. Thank you to you for engaging and becoming involved. I would ask of you to tell a friend, tell 5 friends, tell everyone in your family to get out and vote. Tomorrow is the first advance poll opportunity to vote, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Bowen Park Auditorium. A further advance poll on October 17th, and of course, general voting day on October the 20th. A reminder that the Chamber and our Nanaimo will be hosting a fishbowl forum with select council candidates on October the 15th, 6 o'clock start here at the Conference Center. On behalf of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce and our Nanaimo, I'm Dominic Abassi with NanaiMoNewsNow.com, Nanaimo's undisputed news leader. Thank you for being here tonight.
It's okay. I didn't want to answer. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?